And we now continue the conversation on the St. Lawrence River Institute and the future climate leaders. We're going to meet one of the latter right now, and I'd like to introduce to the show from Sustainable Kingston, Cedric Papalia. Welcome.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you, and this is such an important topic. But right from the get-go, my first question is, who is Cedric?
Yeah, well, I'm the Energy Services Manager for a nonprofit called Sustainable Kingston. Based out of Kingston, but we do operate anywhere between Cornwall and Trenton, all the way up to Highway 7, doing a lot of energy services for homeowners and helping them get grants to reduce their energy consumption, as well as businesses through our Sustainably.eco program. On top of that, I'm also a part-time instructor at St. Lawrence College in the Energy Systems Engineering Technology program, where I really help students gain the skills to really create a positive impact in terms of fighting climate change. On top of that, I also am a mentor for Indigenous Clean Energy, where I help Indigenous communities get off of diesel and implement renewable energy projects, energy efficiency projects, food sustainability projects, and all of the above, and really looking to make that big impact.
Wow, that's quite the resume, but can I ask, why so many roles?
That's a great question, and I ask myself that question a lot, and the real answer is wherever I am, whatever role I'm in, I really try to have the biggest impact I can. I really think climate change is a very serious issue that we need to address. And one of those big components of that climate change issue is reducing our carbon. So all my different roles, even though they are different and focus on different areas, they all have one thing in common, is to reduce carbon emissions and really fight against climate change. And the reality is that there is no one solution. You really have to take a multi-pronged approach and really support as many people as possible to make that positive impact on our planet.
So that's sort of the perfect segue into the next question, which is, how do we achieve those the federal targets, which is net zero by 2050?
Absolutely. So this is a great question. I've been heavily involved with a lot of these programs, and I've been following the federal government's push and their goals for net zero by 2050. I just want to define what net zero is first. Net zero is basically a scenario where we are not putting any emissions into the air, and everything that we're consuming, whether it's transportation, our buildings, all of our production, is not producing any emissions. So net zero is a zero emission future. And the main key thing to highlight here, there are many solutions, many approaches, and we have to do all of them. And that's very key. So obviously a big one is transportation in Canada. You know, there's a lot of money coming out for electric vehicles, a lot of incentives coming out more on the federal level, as well as hydrogen is getting a lot more prevalent, specifically in like long haul transport. So those are really two categories to really look out for transport. And again, there's a lot of funding coming in to improve charging infrastructure, improve the range of these electric vehicles, and the affordability, which is probably the biggest factor on most people's minds when it comes to electric vehicles. And tied to that, everyone always tells me, well, hey, if we have all these electric vehicles, if we're charging them all with natural gas or with coal or basically, dirty fuels, how is that really helping? And the reality is all these technologies have to improve together. So as we're improving and electrifying our transportation system, as does our electricity grid need to be electrified with renewable energy such as solar and wind and hydroelectricity. So these are ones that is really being pushed forward. And one really interesting stat I always like to talk about is the price of solar has dropped nearly 70% since 2010. And that's close to 80% if you're talking about from the 70s. So that price of solar is even more accessible to everyone, businesses, commercial, utility companies, and residential homes, so you can put that rooftop solar on your house. Right now we're looking at about, on the residential sector, and we're right around $3 a watt installed. So if you just add up all your utility bills and talk to a solar contractor, you can really see how you can get those benefits of solar energy in your home right away. But before really getting into solar on a residential level, we always like to talk about building efficiency. So this is kind of the next big piece of the pie, is how do we make our buildings more efficient? The saying I always like to say is a watt saved is cheaper than a watt made. And what I mean by that is reducing the amount of energy we consume in our buildings and our homes is going to be generally more cost effective than implementing solar or wind or some of these other things. And there's a lot of money being pumped in to reducing our consumption within both our current commercial buildings and our residential buildings. So that's really what I'm personally focused on, and my team is as well.
Fantastic. And of course, we always ask, what can we do? So what are homeowners doing to help out in this?
It's a great question. Yeah, absolutely. So the very first step, and one thing that we offer at Sustainable Kingston, we've done quite a lot of work in Cornwall, is conducting what's called an energy audit. And what an energy audit is basically sending in what's called a registered energy advisor. They are registered through the National Resources Canada, so through the federal government, and they will come into your home and look at everything from your heating system, your insulation, your windows, your doors, and they'll actually do what's called an air leakage test, which is pretty cool. It's like a big fan. You put it in the front door, and it basically creates a negative pressure in the house that helps you find all the little air leaks and drafts. And this is one of the top things that you can really address to lower your utility bills and actually even make your house more comfortable, right? You got that room where there's always that draft in the winter, and simply sealing that up, it could be as simple as a can of expanding foam, or little things can be done to really reduce that air leakage, which again will have a massive impact. Obviously, the other part to that is adding insulation. Really, the what we call the low-hanging fruit in the energy industry is insulating attic spaces. So those can come at a very low cost and have a really high return in terms of reducing your energy bills. Again, for a small investment, anywhere between $2,000 to $3,000, which in the grand scheme of things, if any of you guys working on home renovations, that's pretty tiny. But the big ticket item in terms of really reducing greenhouse gas emissions in homes is what's called fuel switching. And if your home is primarily heated with oil, propane, even natural gas, the big change now is to install a heat pump. And what a heat pump basically is, it's essentially like an air conditioner, but it can work in reverse, so it can provide air conditioning in the summer and heating in the winter. And the heat pump uses electricity to work, so therefore the greenhouse gas emissions associated with heating your spaces is dramatically lower. Now, I will say, especially if you're on natural gas, obviously heating your home with electricity sounds expensive, and I will just disprove a lot of the rumors going around, and some misinformation around this topic. Is right now, even if you're on natural gas, switching to a heat pump will relatively cost you the same amount of money. It won't cost you more. You're not going to save a whole lot, but you're going to reduce your emissions by anywhere between 60 to 80%, which is huge. The other part when it comes to heat pumps is, again, as you're transitioning your entire electricity load to your heating load to electricity, this of course increases your electricity bill. And one of the ways to really knock that down is installing solar. So I would say the magic combo when people are going through these programs is installing a heat pump and installing solar together. That way you're transitioning all your heating costs to electricity, and then you're knocking down that electricity bill with your solar. And I've seen customers save anywhere between $2,000 to $3,000 a year on their utility bills, which is significant.
Amazing.
So,
And you mentioned grants as well that may be able to help. How do they work, and how can people apply?
yeah, absolutely. This is, again, we're in such an exciting time. There's a big transitioning happening, and part of that transition is all the grants that are available. I do want to point out one in particular that we've been extremely busy with, which is called the Canada Greener Homes Program. So this is a federal program where homeowners can receive up to $5,600 in government grants to help offset some of these costs for these home retrofits. Those, include what I call as a retrofit is basically an improvement in your home that will reduce your energy consumption. And some of the things covered are, again, the air leakage that I mentioned, insulation. Of course, heat pumps are really big. They will never cover, any installation of new natural gas, propane, or oil equipment. Everything is being transitioned to heat pumps. That's kind of the big push. And I just want to say, the way all these programs are funded is directly from the carbon tax. So we all know there's a carbon tax, a federal carbon tax that we all pay for, that is contributing to the increased cost of natural gas, oil, propane, and gasoline. But all those funds are what funds these programs. So all that carbon tax, that money is rolled back into these programs that can help you transition away from those fossil fuels for heating, and really save on your bills. Really exciting news. It's about to come out. I heard some rumors that it might have actually launched today, so it's very good timing. The Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation also is going to be announcing, or has just announced, a $40,000 loan at zero interest that is tied to the Canada Greener Homes program. So again, additional funds, $40,000, so you can really get in there and do the big projects. I will say, probably installing a heat pump and solar is going to cost you close to the $40,000 mark. So these are not inexpensive things to do, and that's why it's really fantastic that we have the supports in place, the funding in place to make this happen. And again, the technology is here, contractors know what they need to do, and it's happening.
That is fantastic. And I have to ask you before we go, Cedric, why is this all so important to you?
That is an excellent question. I think about that every day. I think when we hear about climate change, the talk is often about natural disasters, flooding, tornadoes that we're getting, storm warnings every other day, huge heat strokes, drought, all of these negative things, and it could be quite overwhelming and kind of deterring to think that we can actually do anything about it. And why this is so important, these programs and these support mechanisms and these technologies that are helping us get there, is really they inspire hope, and they're giving me hope on a personal level that we can combat this challenge, and we can reduce our emissions, and we can achieve net zero. The technology is here, the will is here, the money is here, all the pieces of the puzzle are there. We just got to put that puzzle together, and that's what really gives me hope for the future.
Fantastic. And so on that note, I want to thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for all your hard work, and we look forward to continuing this conversation and maybe doing an update in the future on this exciting work. So thank you for joining us, and best of luck.
Thank you. My pleasure.